So this morning I have a lovely interlocution from Our Lady about missionary life. Our Lady, my children, following Jesus is a delicate mix of going out and coming back in. Just like the early apostles, Jesus sends you out like sheep among wolves, like soldiers in a war. As you gain ground, sometimes you will get injured and exhausted from the battle. During these times you will suffer even more, and often you will have to stop, to rest, to pray, and to heal. The temptation will be to stay where things are safe, and to avoid the battleground, in fear of getting injured, or indeed to go back into battle too soon, and to get further wounded unnecessarily. This is where wisdom and expert spiritual directors are needed. And I remind all spiritual directors, who are in charge of souls, not to let their human feelings and thoughts cloud the action of the Holy Spirit. Just as Peter told Jesus not to go to Jerusalem for good human reasons, many of you too misjudge and misguide my apostles of love. Once again, I remind you to read the lives of the saints, especially those who are great and courageous missionaries, and allow the Holy Spirit to raise up similar missionaries in your midst. Quite a lot in that, and quite a profound message, and yet in a way quite logical. If we think of a war, for example, we know that in wars, soldiers get wounded, and when they get wounded, they have to go back to the infirmary, and then there they get treated. If it's a serious wound, they'll be treated for much longer. If it's a very, very serious wound, obviously they'll have to go home. But if it's not such a serious wound, well then when the wound is healed, they will go back out, and they will go back out into the battlefield. And so Our Lady is saying the same thing when it comes to evangelization, when it comes to missionary work. That there is the aspect of healing where we all need healing, but there's also the aspect of mission where we're all being sent out, and we're being sent out to evangelize, we're being sent out to change the world in whatever way we can. But sometimes when we go out, it's difficult. And say, for example, if you go out evangelizing, things could happen. You could get insulted, you could get spat at. Horrible things at times can happen. People can say horrible things to you. Not to mention at times people can get into physical danger, for example, as well. People can get beaten up, people can get abused. Sometimes people, maybe they might have a picture of Jesus or something like that, and somebody might steal it and break it and who knows what. So basically Our Lady is saying that sometimes we're going to get injured, either physically or spiritually or emotionally, from the battle, from evangelization. And during these times we're going to suffer even more. And sometimes because of these wounds, we're going to have to stop, we're going to have to rest, we're going to have to pray, and we're going to have to heal. And sometimes it's maybe an hour or two in prayer, a couple of days off, a good confession, an inner healing retreat. But sometimes it's more serious, and sometimes people need 6 months or more, or even a couple of years to recuperate. It depends on the different situation. But then she's saying that the temptation, of course, for all of us is to stay in the safe place. The temptation, for example, if there's a war or something going on, is to pray but to stay away because it's safe. And so the temptation, I suppose, is not to go out evangelizing again, not to go out doing missionary work again, to stay in the church where it's safe, to pray, which of course is good, but not to go out there out of fear. And then another temptation, of course, which is the opposite one, is the temptation is that you need to take a bit of time off, you need a bit of healing, but you are so gung-ho, you want to go back out in the battlefield, that you go out before you're ready, and it's a bit like walking on a broken leg. It's too soon, it's too early, and then basically you even do more damage. And so this is what Our Lady is saying, that expert spiritual directors are needed to help each soul. So a spiritual director's job is to help the soul find the balance between the interior things the Holy Spirit is doing and then the exterior actions, internal forum, external forum, they kind of call that. And so the spiritual director has to be careful not to be clouded by human emotions and by human judgments. And Our Lady uses the simple example of St. Peter there. Jesus told St. Peter and his apostles, he said, I'm going to go to Jerusalem where the Son of Man is going to be handed over and where he's going to die. And St. Peter's immediate reaction was, no, Jesus, you mustn't go, you mustn't go. Now, he didn't say that out of any bad will. He said that because he loved Jesus and he didn't want to see Jesus getting hurt. Yet Jesus replied to him very severely, saying, go behind me, Satan. Now, you could almost say it wasn't necessary to say that, but who am I to say what's necessary or not, especially when Jesus said it. But in other words, he was saying, Jesus said, your ideas are not the ideas of God. Your thoughts are not the thoughts of God. And so Jesus is saying the same thing. The Holy Spirit raises people up. The Holy Spirit sends people out. The Holy Spirit sends people at times into difficult situations, into dangerous situations, into strange situations. And we must be very, very careful to discern properly and to not get human judgments and human reasonings, especially if someone is in a position of spiritual director, to cloud it. And so finally Our Lady says, once again I remind you to read the lives of the saints, and especially those who are great and courageous missionaries. Because it's through reading the lives of the saints we come to understand the way the Holy Spirit works, the way he has worked in the past, and he's the same Holy Spirit, so the way he worked in the past is also the same way as he's working now, and how he wants to raise up apostles now. And for me, of course, this message really touches my heart, because it's what Seamus and Tony and I have been doing over the last couple of years in terms of evangelization in the LGBT community, which at times has been extremely difficult. At times it's wounded us enormously as well, and yet at times what's even been more wounding, unfortunately, is the lack of understanding of why we're doing it and all the caper that goes with that. So Our Lady is saying, read the lives of the saints, pray, and not to be afraid to follow Jesus and to be great soldiers and great apostles of love for Our Lady. So from London, from me, have a great week, and may we save as many souls for Jesus as possible.